What's up everybody, this is Jose from Southern Life. On today's video, we're going to be talking about moving to Naples, Florida, my hometown where I spent 20 years of my life. May not be the Naples that your realtor is telling you about. When I think about Naples, I think about the Florida Everglades. To me, the beauty of this place is the ecology and the nature, an ecosystem that is unique to nowhere else in the world. Can the natural beauty and uniqueness of this place be compared to? For many reasons, the natural habitat is unlike anything else in the world. However, as the population continues to grow, the ecology and the beauty of this place is starting to fade away. A true sportsman paradise with some of the best saltwater fishing in the entire country, freshwater and saltwater, sometimes both in the same place. I've caught largemouth bass in river estuaries, and I've caught snook 50 miles inland. Between white sandy beaches and beautiful mangrove swamps, the area offers some of the best boating experiences you can imagine. Local history relates that Cuban fishermen have been coming here as early as the 1600s. Along the west coast of Florida and as far north as Tampa, these temporary fishing camps were some of the first European colonizations of the state of Florida. While the northern region of Florida was apt for many sites that were missions, the southern part of the state, in particular the area of Naples, was largely uninhabited. In what is today Estero Bay, the Calusa Indians on Mound Key had set up their empire, which revolved around trading with northern tribes and also fishing, right up until the arrival of the Spanish Empire and their conquest for gold. The Calusa natives reigned over the land, bountiful catches with their nets, trapping fish with the rise and drop of the tides. European colonizations were vastly limited only to the Cuban fishermen and their temporary camps, which did not acknowledge the transition of power of Florida from the Spanish to the English. A land full of alligators, mosquitoes, persistent no-see-ums and poisonous snakes, few Englishmen would dare accept the order to be transferred here to occupy a land that only the most brute descendants of the Spaniards were willing to temporarily inhabit, leaving the vast inland swamps unconquered and untouched by human development. It was only until the 1960s of the development of things like air conditioning that Florida began to have inhabitants in a larger scale. Before that, anybody who called themselves a native Floridian was a very tough soul. Along the shores of Naples, you could have seen boats with live cattle heading from Punta Rasa in Fort Myers, the living product of Arcadia, Florida, on its way to Havana, Cuba. The mansions of Arcadia were built with the cattle that was sold to Cuba, a land that has never been able to produce enough cow to satisfy the hunger of its residents. In the late 1800s, there were real cowboys in Southwest Florida. By the late 1880s, efforts were being made to survey Southwest Florida. The endeavors of the Spaniards, which started in 1513, were now a thing of the past. By the late 1880s, in Bonita Springs, just north of Naples, a farmer from Alabama with 50 slaves was trying to cultivate pineapples, coconuts, and other types of tropical fruits with the farming techniques originated in Cuba. However, these large plantations were unsuccessful in eliminating the United States' need for trade with Cuba. By 1917, a road had been established from Fort Myers to Bonita Springs, but had not yet reached Naples, which remained the unconquered land of swamp buggies. Today, the swamp buggy races are one of the city's most iconic events that remind us of this area's wild past, a sporting phenomenon unique to this particular region of the country, honoring the efforts and rugged lifestyles of those who were really the pioneers of one of the most rugged natural landscapes in the country. So while today you might leave your gated community in a Cadillac or a Subaru with New Jersey license plates, the first inhabitants of Naples had a very different go at it. The Naples Pier, which today is an iconic symbol for the city of Naples that is recognized throughout the entire world, was the city's main source of transportation until the roads arrived, and the Naples Pier was constantly being battered and destroyed by many back-to-back hurricanes. At the time, one of the area's most notable curiosities were millions of fiddler crabs in all directions. By the 1930s, the rail and roads had reached Naples, and in the 1940s, once again the pier was destroyed by another hurricane. 45 minutes south of Naples is Everglades City. In the late 1800s, it was nothing more than a small trading post, but tourists from up north were already flocking here for fishing and hunting expeditions. The city of Naples was founded in 1886 by businessmen and Confederate generals from Louisville, Kentucky. Ironically, I also came from Louisville, Kentucky. And I'm also Cuban. There's a weird historical connection between Naples and Cubans and Kentuckians. Naturally, I ended up here. Well, these Confederate generals who came from Kentucky decided that they were going to pitch in their magazines, the Louisville Courier, which is still in circulation today, how the area was renowned for fishing, and they likened it to Italy in its beauty, and that is why the city obtained the name of Naples for the counterpart in Italy, Napoli. Less romantic today, considering it's just a mob-infested, crime-infested slum of sorts, but you get the idea. Venice, just to the north of Naples, also has an Italian name. By the 1920s, Baron Collier began to buy large amounts of land in South Florida, including what is now Naples, Florida, thus the name Collier County. And northern sportsmen were starting to establish their winter homes here. By the end of the 1920s, the Atlantic Coastline Rail had made it past Naples all the way to Everglades City, the southernmost point that it ever reached. Before the 1930s, connections and roads had been done from Everglades City to Immokalee, making the innermost parts of Collier County accessible. In 1960, Hurricane Donna made many damages to Everglades City, and thus, after the destruction of many homes and damaging many more in Collier County, the county seat had to be moved to East Naples, where it would be considered safer from the direct impact of hurricane landfall. And thus, this hurricane natural disaster had the ability to influence the future development of the area. In the 70s and 80s, the government started to have more regulations with the ecology of the area, leaving the fishermen with no other way to make a living. The area had heavily depended on fishing for subsistence. As federal forces put a larger eye on the Miami area, Everglades City and the canals coming into Naples had become a prime location for drug smuggling from Colombia, Cuba, and the Caribbean islands. With the encroachment of regulation, many of the fishing vessels were soon being used to smuggle tons of marijuana from Colombia. While our history books show that Everglades City in 1983 were the prime focus of a government raid where just about everybody in town was in some way or another vinculated to the trafficking of marijuana and cocaine from Colombia. And these were known as the Cocaine Cowboys. Less notable in the history books, but much also present in this activity, were the areas of Naples. One of these operations to Everglades City was believed to traffic 75 tons a week from the mountains of Colombia to the shores of Everglades City. Port Royal is today one of the most respected and expensive communities in Naples, with homes going into the tens of millions of dollars, being some of the most expensive real estate in the state of Florida outside of Miami and Palm Beach. Old timers in Naples tell stories of homes in Port Royal being used as delivery sites for large amounts of marijuana as well. So maybe some of the city's old money could be big-time dope dealers, who indirectly benefited from the high rents these dealers were willing to pay to temporarily rent these mansions for these operations. In North Naples, the area where I grew up in, the old-timers would tell me stories of shipments coming up the Cocohatchee River were so large that they filled up a box truck and they couldn't close the back gate. Back then, these were large shipments, and just about everybody in town had to pitch in to get these loads off and moving further north. A community effort. This guy's from New York. You may have heard stories about Miami, the city that was built on drug money. Naples was also built on drug money. Today, Cubans and Colombians still comprise a significant portion of the population in the Naples area. And it's really local history at this point. Some estimates put Miami at being 80% built on drug money, and Naples area to an extent also had a lot of that, clearly linked to its geographical location and ties to Latin America. This reliance on trade between the islands and Florida has always existed, and today Naples hosts a large amount of Latin American influence. So the things we see today in Naples: high rents along the coast, people coming here to escape the winters and enjoy the sporting and other natural activities with boating that the area provides. These activities are nothing new. They have been going on in Naples for decades and maybe even longer. What's different now is that the footprint and volume of people coming here is more than this area's ecology can tolerate. Increasing regulations from the Florida Wildlife Commission suggests that once again, government regulation to protect the natural resources will mean drastic economical impact on those who depend on these activities. As history keeps repeating itself, the population is growing beyond any possible understanding of the delicate ecosystem that is present here. The area desperately needs infrastructure to help alleviate the traffic congestions that are present. Many protected areas like the Corkscrew Swamp are a barrier between where the people have to be able to live and where the work is at. With no clear plans in sight for expressways or other alternative routes other than US 41 and Interstate 75, it's widely accepted that there's going to be no alleviation to the suffering pain of traffic in Southwest Florida, and Naples being the bottleneck of it, really. Many of the properties in the Golden Gate Estates have a 75-foot setback in the rear, and it is believed that many of these setbacks will be bought out and turned into more roadways. Just like the Tampa area had an extension into Pasco County, it is also believed that at some point there's going to be an extension from Polk County to Corler County, and this could help reduce north to south congestion and easier access to inland locations like La Belle, where people will be able to commute into Naples living further away. But at this moment, the city needs massive infrastructure. Just like the extension now all the way into Citrus County has helped people in Tampa be able to commute further and further away, something has to be done in Naples. However, those ecological regulations, protected areas like the Corkscrew Swamp, are massive barriers. Florida has for a long time been a real estate scam since the 70s. Places like Lehigh, Cape Coral, even further back into the 50s and 60s, were plotted out and sold to unsuspecting people who were buying swampland. So this real estate fraud, which is almost endemic to the real estate atmosphere of Florida at this point, persistently suggests that if the land itself was a fraud and the homes themselves were a fraud, how could there possibly be infrastructure to accommodate these properties? Naples does have Arthrex, which is a large company that has a great reputation among its employees. They've made large investments in the community, which were desperately needed, and Naples needs to continue to have these large investments to be able to sustain the employment needed for all these people that are moving here, since costs of living and incomes here just don't correlate. So at this point, when we look towards the future of Naples, some of these billionaires who have homes here need to make billion-dollar investments in the place they live. 94 square miles south of Interstate 75, which was the South Everglades project, was another real estate scam that in the 80s sold lots to unsuspecting investors throughout the entire world. Lots that were nothing more than swampland. This eerie grid pattern of streets was so desolate that it was even used to land airplanes by smugglers. Part of the Everglades restoration plan bought back these plots of land from very disappointed investors, and it is now a natural area that you can enjoy, where massive amounts of money are still being dumped into micromanaging an area that should probably just be left alone. Dredging is another activity that I believe damages the ecology, and very little attention is paid to this activity. It involves digging up these passes like Wiggins Pass that we're looking up here so that boats can pass in deeper canals. However, the natural state of these passes is usually no more than 3 feet deep, which is not enough for a boat to pass. There's an assortment of small little snails that eat up algae and other microorganisms which are likely related to the red tide. These microorganisms and snails are pretty much gone at this point, as they don't seem to survive the dredging process. This and countless other factors affect the red tide, which has been completely out of control in the last 6 years. And while it is a naturally occurring process, it has been tampered with by humans, and it is now an outright ecological disaster. disaster, with more contributing factors than we can think of. However, despite these ecological disasters, which have pretty much paralyzed beaches from Marco Island all the way up to Sarasota and are now moving further north than they have ever gone in history, affecting the Gulf Coast at a scale that is unprecedented. Despite this unfortunate situation, which kills the fish, contaminates the water, and even makes many people who are sensitive to these allergies very sick, there's no end in sight to the development and people moving here, despite the obvious signs that the environment just cannot handle these abnormalities caused by human encroachment. The Florida aquifer, the way the soil drains here, is very different than in other places. Most of the places here are not more than a few feet above the sea level. Natural disasters like hurricanes have in the past shaped this place, and they will continue to define the future of this area. And just like in the past, there were real estate scams and misinformation spread, things were covered up to continue the sale of these properties. It is no different today. While on one hand, there's all these regulations to quote-unquote protect the environment, in reality, a monstrous thing is going on a scale that has never been seen before. People are turning their eyes blindly out of fear or out of profit to the obvious damage that's being done to this place. Naples continues to be one of the most beautiful cities in the United States, where you can have a black bear walk into your backyard on a normal basis, enjoy world-class fishing, and it will continue to grow and attract people. But how much can the ecology of this place handle? And when will the infrastructure projects that are long overdue to accommodate the traffic that is already here? People move to Naples now and they call it a paradise. It might be to them, but it was a better paradise that's now gone. In the era of Prohibition, Cubans brought in boatloads of rum. In the 70s, boats from Colombia brought tons of marijuana. From its infancy, Naples has been scamming people from up north who've come to enjoy the beaches, warm weather in the winter, and world-class fishing. A lot of people think this pattern is new, but it's been present here from the start. Except today we have a few mounting problems, where we're no longer a small little fishing village with a little smuggling problem, but one of the largest growing regions in the country. Since the start of the pandemic, the vast majority of places in the United States have had negative job growth. However, Florida has a few regions which have gone against the trend and have actually had positive job growth. Places like Lakeland, for example, where there's roadways, there's infrastructure, and there's large investment from companies. But however, Naples is a city with a strong dependency on tourism, which is only present during half the year. But your bills and expenses will be year-round. After living here for 20 years, I learned as much from this place from being here as I did from leaving it and going elsewhere. It's pretty disappointing to say that I actually made a better living in some of the poorest regions of rural Alabama than I did in Naples. The job opportunities for a regular person here are absolutely depressing considering what it actually costs to live here. You would think, living in these $1 million properties, that these people would have no problem paying you for your work. Turns out, in fact, that they're some of the most miserable rats you're going to meet your whole life. Despite indulging in every pleasure money could give, they put zero effort or appreciation into the people that make it happen for them. Except for nowadays, people are refusing to work and they're tired of being exploited. If I'm going to work in Naples, it's going to be at an absolute premium. I'm tired of being exploited, and if you're a regular class dude like me, Naples is no place for you. And if you are able to afford it, have a little bit of consideration for the people that are driving hour and a half from Lehigh to come here and clean your toilet for you. And like I said, there's no economical futures here. If you come here broke, you're going to leave broker. Come with money, have a great time, enjoy one of the most gifted places you're going to find in the entire United States. And remember, I made more money in Alabama than I ever did here.